Impact on offspring's lives in the novel Homegoing by Yagayasi. Presentation by Roshnik Sheikh. About the novel. The novel Homegoing by Yagayasi is an extraordinary family-oriented novel about many generations from a single ancestor. Introduction. It all starts in Ghana with two sisters, Effia and Essie, who never meet in the story and live totally opposite lives in different tribes. Effia, the elder sister, marries a British soldier and moves to the castle, while her sister Essie is captured from her village and becomes a prisoner in the same castle. The novel surrounds the story of the generations to come from the two sisters. In Yagayasi's novel Homegoing, the lives of the characters Kojo Freeman, Carson Clifton, and Quay Collins and the amount of racism they face are affected by decisions their parents made. Kojo Freeman. Kojo's life and the amount of racism he faces chiefly depends on the decisions his parents Ness Stockham and Sam made in their lifetime. You can't raise a baby in hell. Page 184. This is significant because if Kojo's parents had not decided to try and escape slavery for this reason, he would not be the man he is today. Instead, he would have to be one of the approximately 12 million slaves that were taken from Africa between the 15th century and 19th century just because of their race. Secondly, when Ness and Sam got caught, she made the decision to lie that her child was dead and hoped her eyes had that look in them, that look that mothers got sometimes when they came back from running, having killed their children to set them free. Page 187. The possibility that slave women committed infanticide through letting their young infants die is likely. This shows that it's something that women did commonly to free their children of slavery. Yet Ness went through so much trouble for her son. This is significant because Kojo's father lost his life and his mother was beaten harshly after that, but they made the sacrifice, and due to that their son is free and does not have to be a slave just because of his skin color. Lastly, Kojo gets to be a free man and works on the ship in the city like any other free man because of his parents' sacrifices. He faces less racism than his parents did, but this does not mean he does not face any. For example, in the novel it says, whenever a boat was robbed, all the black dock workers were rounded up and questioned. Page 238. Due to what Kojo's parents did for him, he has a significantly better life, as he is a free man and ultimately faces less racism than his parents did. Carson Clifton. The life of Carson Clifton and the amount of racism he faces is negatively and positively affected by the actions of his parents, Willie Black and Robert Clifton. Carson's parents divorced when he was quite young, leaving him and his mother with no money and causing them to move around all the time. This is relevant because once his parents separated, they did not have money to survive, and so they must move from apartment to apartment, which Carson hated. This made him and his mother not get along, and he ultimately searched for kinship elsewhere. Eventually, he got with the wrong girl and became a drug addict, which impacted his life in a negative way. He spent a lot of his time in jail for joining segregation protests as he was angry that his father was racist towards him, and his mother left because they were a different skin color than him. Secondly, Gayasi writes, he was mad at her because he didn't have a father, and she was mad at him because he'd become as absent as his own. Page 513. This is significant because if his mother had not gotten mad at him, he would not have been able to realize that he was being just as bad as his own father, and he would never have decided to stop doing drugs and take care of his son, Marcus. His son eventually grows up to be very well educated and successful because of what his grandmother did. All in all, Clifton's life is greatly impacted by his dad's decision to leave them because of their race, and his mother's decision to be angry at Carson until he realizes he is being just as bad as his father. Quay Collins. Quay Collins is positively affected by his parents Effia, Otter, and James Collins' actions. First of all, Effia married James, a white man instead of a man of her own village. This made an enormous difference as her son Quay got to grow up in a better environment, unlike the village where Effia came from. For example, when Kui goes to his mother's village when he is older, the novel says he misses the castle, the breeze from the beach. Here in the village of his mother, Effia, sweat pooled in his ears and his belly button. Page 111. Secondly, when his father found out about Kui being interested in his male friend, he decided to send Kui to study in London. This changes Kui's life as he becomes well educated and got a high-ranked job in his mother's village later on. The only problem was that in the mother's village, they did not like that Kui studied in a white country and often said, "I don't know why Effia let James send you to that nonsense country." Page 118. This goes to show that Kui did face plenty of racism in his own village, because whenever he did something that was not part of the village's culture, he was reminded of the fact that he studied in a foreign country. Little did they know that Kui's life was complicated further by his homosexuality, as it was not allowed at the time. If James had not sent his son out of country away from his friend, people would have found out about his sexuality and he would have become an outcast from the village instead of getting such a well-paid job there. Overall, James and Effia's decision helped Kui become successful, although he did have to face racism because of those decisions. Conclusion. The characters Kojo, Carson, and Kui's lives are impacted immensely by the decisions their parents have made, which ultimately changed the amount of racism they faced. Kojo is impacted by his parents' decision to escape and by the sacrifices his parents made for him. Carson is impacted by his parents' separation and his mother's advantageous advice. Lastly, Kui is impacted by his parents' decision to send him away and his mother's decision to leave the village. At the end of the day, Gayasi's novel is a wonderful novel that should be read by anyone who wants to learn about prejudice that African Americans face and their family-oriented culture. Works cited.